Tired of your flimsy, wobbly old workbench? Or maybe you don't even have one yet. Today I'm building this super solid workbench, costing only $63 in lumber. If you wish to fancy it up and have 2 Benjamins in your pocket, you can build the bench and include all of the accessories shown here today. Plus grab lunch. What do you mean it's a prop box? They're not just gonna give you an empty box to use. Are you serious? Prop box, my nana, there's clearly been pizza in here. You freaking kidding me? I purchased 18 2x4x8s, the cheap ones. And if you have them delivered to your door, make sure you pick the boards out yourself, because the kid picking your order grabs whatever's on top. Zero quality control. And since it's a 45-minute drive back to the lumber store, I'm just gonna keep what they had given me. So, one by one, I'm carrying them into the shop and cutting 11 2x4s to 72 3/4 of an inch. Since my finished tabletop is going to be 72 inches long, I want a little extra on the ends so that after assembly, I can make a perfectly straight edge. Now we need to remove the rounded edges of our 2x4s to make them look like this. I start by setting my table saw fence to 3 1/4 of an inch, running all of the boards for my top and those extras through all at one time. Then I bump the fence down to 3 inches to remove the other rounded edge. And I'll give you a second to add a comment about my outfeed table. What outfeed table? If you don't have a table saw, you can leave the rounded edges or turn your boards the other direction and use a hand plane or belt sander to get the tops nice and smooth. However, this will require more material. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you are trying to figure out how many boards you need to cut down to make your table top, you're not going to divide your number by the traditional 3.5 inch wide 2x4. You're going to do it by 3 inches. Now it's time to transform those 2x4s into a beautiful workbench top. I cut open a contractor trash bag to make cleanup a little easier. I'm using Titebond 3, mainly because I have literally gallons of it for planter boxes, and it's a little more runny than Titebond 1 or 2. It's also the only food grade safe Titebond, in case you plan to eat at your workbench. I let my glue set up for about 3 minutes. This gives it time to absorb into the wood before I clamp and squeeze out a good portion of it. I am gluing 3 boards together at a time. You can see I only put glue on 2 boards since the middle board is sandwiched in between my 2 glue joints. Breaking down this process into a few smaller and more manageable bits, it's less frustrating, I can use shorter clamps, and overall I prefer this method. I'm using 5 12-inch bar clamps from Harbor Freight, 1 in the center and 2 near the edges. I also have a few scrap boards with clear packing tape on them to keep my boards level. I use smaller 6-inch clamps for these. The tape prevents the glue from sticking to the board. The other 2 clamps go on the opposite side of our glue up. Since the rails bow when you tighten down the clamps, it can cause your project to bow due to the unparalleled pressure. By adding clamps to both sides, this helps equalize that pressure. Using a towel, I clean up any runny glue. Much like concrete, it's easier to work with before it hardens. It's also rather tough on your planer, chisels, etc. And now, you can remove all of those clamps. To pre-surface your boards, you can use a hand plane, electric hand plane, belt sander, or your planer. I left mine in smaller sections so that I could run them through the planer. But again, the workbenches you see every week in my videos were flattened using a belt sander. It's 100% doable. I then pondered which side looked best and made the runner-up my back/bottom. These were ran through the planer but not finished to perfection like the tops. Here we go, the big glue up. If you don't have access to longer clamps, you can use a few ratchet straps. Just ensure they aren't lying in the glue while it dries. I could borrow my dad or grandpa's longer clamps if needed. However, I had a few of the just older style bar clamps, and they'll work just fine. Since this build is customizable and some of you might not be following exactly the plans that I am doing in front of me, I'm going to go ahead and cut all of these pieces and then come back. So you don't need to watch me cut out the pieces because it might not be important to you. Just note that they will be all labeled the same. Get your pieces cut out to the correct sizing that you need them, and I'll see you in about 4 seconds. Board D and board C, I took the time to router a nice roundover onto that end grain instead of them being flat like they were previously. And that's because when I butt them up together now, if this was board B, D fits nicely, C would fit nicely on the top, instead of it looking like this, where board C has a straight edge, board B has the rounded, B has rounded, D has straight edge. You get it. If you want to do that, it fancies it up just a little bit. All we have left prior to assembly is to mark a few spots on board G and board B so that our screw spots are equal and they don't look messy. I take value in that. So on board G, I had marked out and drilled a few just so you guys can see what it looks like afterwards. If you do not want to drill and pilot your holes, you do not have to. You'd have to get a little bit longer screws. I just don't want the screw heads to be sticking right on the outside. I want them countersink just a little bit. And if I want to go back through and fill these holes in with like a darker wood or a contrasting wood, that's a cool thing to do as well. To do this, it's very easy. What I have going on here, board B is going to go this direction, board C is going to sit right here, board B is going this direction, and board D is going to get screwed onto here, except it's going to be on top. You get it. Let's lay it out. On the top of our board, I'm going to measure down 3.5 inches. I'm going to measure down 3.5 inches. And on the bottom of the board, I'm going to measure up 3.5 inches 3 times. So that's my layout. I'm going to take my speed square, set them up, score a gentle line. It doesn't have to be that dark. It's really just for reference. You're going to sand it away here in a little bit. So make it as dark as you wish to sand it off. I'm going to flip them around like this. I'm going to put them on the bottom where this line hits the corner. Should be pretty close to my corner because it's a square. And I'm going to measure down 1.25 inches. Whoa, 1.25 inches, not 1.5 inches. And you're going to do this for all of your lines, measuring in the same direction. I chose to use 1.5 inch Forstner bit. That's just because it's a standard size for dowel rod I have sitting over there. I have a plug cutter that would match this if I do wish to do the darker woods. Just make sure you have a Forstner bit size. That's a normal size of dowel rod you could possibly find. I've messed it up a few times where I couldn't find a dowel rod because I used a weird size. You're just going to put that on the hole, and I drill down just until the head is underneath. That's far enough for me. Right to there. Repeat that for the rest of this board and those boards. They're all the same. And then we'll do B. On board B, I'm going to prep for the screw spots that are going to hold all of our F bracing in place. So I know that this first 3.5 inches is going to be the leg. I don't have to worry about that. That next 1.5 inches is where that bracing is going to come into play. So 3.5 to 5 inches. I know that's the bracing. I really don't need to mark any lines for it. I do just need to mark in between this 1.5 inches at the 4.25 mark. So I know that is the center of that F bracing board. I'm going to do the same thing on spot 23, just because my board is 69 inches long. That divided by 3, 23 inches. So 23 inches would be dead center. I went 23, and then I measured over the extra 1.5 inches, and I marked the center of that spot. You can mark these however you wish. Just make sure that that marking is equal on both boards, on both sides. Otherwise, your centerpieces might not line up correctly. Now I'm going to take my speed square, put it on that exact center mark, and then I'm going to measure in 3/4 inch and 3/4 inch. I'm going to do that for all 3 of these guys. And using that same 1.5 inch Forstner bit, I'm going to just drill these out just so it's a head's depth. And this is going to be visible from the front of your workbench. Assembly of the legs. Grab a scrap cutoff, board G, board C, and board D. Add some glue and square up board D at the bottom. Pay attention to your wood grain direction. I use a clamp to hold it into place and screw it in from the back. I am using a Hillman No. 8 2.5 inch premium interior cabinet screw. However, really any screw will do at this point because the glue is going to play a large part in assembly. The scrap wood is a spacer to act as board B while we glue up this section. Add some glue for board C and clamp and screw it into position. And just repeat that for all of the legs. I just got my B board. I got a couple Fs. This is going to be the bottom section, the bottom racking of that workbench, and then I'll build the other one for the top. This is the bottom because I picked out my nice pieces of 2x4 for F, nicer boards for B, because you can see those on the bottom, so I wanted these to look nice. When you get to the top, everything's going to be hidden underneath that workbench, so I can use the crummy, crappy ones they had brought me. No one's going to see it. It's up underneath. Line board F with those holes that we had previously drilled in board B. For the two outside boards, I am just using a scrap piece of 2x4 just so I can get my spacing correct for when I want to attach the legs. Using my speed square to keep everything looking nice. Little glue, screw those together. And repeat this for the other parallel side B board. Say that 5 times fast. And you'll end up with two sections that look like this, except they don't need to be arranged like that. It's not a pin. You're not even in it. You're pretty much outside of it. Just walk through. Why would I put myself in a pin with you? I find this step to be a little easier on ground level. Take those legs, square them up, little glue, screw those puppies in. If you guys are using caster wheels, now would be the time to install those. Picked mine up from Amazon. They're like 25 bucks. They come with bolts, not using them, so I'm just going to use screws. I'm going to use their washers and screw them onto the bottom. I am not going to be gluing my workbench top to this structure, mainly because if I wanted to make any general modifications or replace the top in the future, just an extra step that I'm going to have to work around. Instead, I'm going to give you two options. Option 1, purchasing some of those little 70-cent L brackets, screwing them to the inside of B, some of them onto the interiors of F, and then screwing them into the bottom of our workbench top once we get everything situated. Otherwise, if you happen to own a pocket hole jig, Craig jig tool, you can just make some pocket holes on the interior and you can mount it down that way, which happens to be the method that I am choosing. Just putting a couple pocket hole screws down B, a couple on the interiors of F, looks good. Wrestle the top onto your workbench table and remove all your clamps. The chicken really wasn't a help for this. Then using a hand plane, your electric hand plane, or a belt sander, finish flattening out the top. And we're pretty close to perfect right now. If you are using a belt sander, make sure you have continuous motion and you're not sitting in one spot for too long. It's going to create a divot. When securing the top to the table, I like to add a few clamps and just give it a good squeeze. This makes sure it's as tight as possible without putting extra strain on the screws to make them do this job for me. Since my circular saw blade is 1.5 inches past my base, I rigged this up, and as you could see, this line perfectly marries up to that line underneath. So I know that this would be 1.5 inches. So I just threw this bad boy up here. Using this, got it nice and square. This is what I'm cutting off. Just need to get this guy out of there, clamp this side, make my cut, and then repeat this for the other side as well. So if you've made it this far in the project, go ahead and pat yourself on the back. Your workbench is looking nice. Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on 1 second. This isn't the new workbench. This is the old one. Let's get rid of this bad boy. Whose job is it to sweep? And at this moment, you're $63 lighter, 18 2x4s. Caster wheels are an option, so 63 bucks. You have yourself a completed workbench. You can make some projects, make some money. There's a few other things that I would like to upgrade on this bench myself that I didn't have on my previous model. So really, to show you a bench dog system, I kind of have to have one. So let's do it. For this bench dog system, we need to drill some holes into our newly acquired workbench top. And you can space your holes out however you wish. If you want them close together, if you wish them to be far apart, if you only want them to be on half. Heck, it's your workbench. Drill holes however you feel comfortable. But for me, I am doing them 8 inches apart, so they make a nice little grid pattern across the top. In the plans is a nifty diagram to show you exactly how I laid out all of the holes on the workbench if you're building it this exact size. Otherwise, there is a nice equation that'll tell you how to line up your holes, keep them centered, however many holes you want. yada, yada, yada. It's a nice thing. Now to drill our holes, we have two options. You can just grab your drill, grab your Forstner bit. I try to shy away from spade bits. I don't want them to gar up or eat the top of my workbench. Even though I am using a round over router bit right on the inside afterwards, I don't want it to split out or make it look nasty, so I am using Forstner bit. Nice. It's pine. It's going to go right through it. Otherwise, you could pick up one of these. It's just like having your drill press, but you put your cordless drill into it. Has a handle. You can set this for different angles if you're trying to drill some tricky stuff. It's a nice little system to have. Sits right on the top. I can make sure those holes are looking real good for our new workbench top. As I'm blasting some tunes, drilling some holes, pretty therapeutic, quite relaxing. How do I know if I have termites? And using a teeny tiny round over bit, I just went around the interiors of those holes we had just drilled. So why the heck did we just drill a bunch of holes into our workbench top? It's to integrate the bench dog system. They make these little plugs, have nice little rubber feet on the top. They drop right in the hole. You can put your board in here, put a couple of them. So, if you're trying to screw or clamp, just an extra set of hands built into the workbench. Nice little rubber thing you can put, stained projects on top of. Those are pretty sweet. These guys, they also fit right in the holes. Put your board in there, clamp it down, do whatever you're doing. And if you had a couple extra pieces of that workbench top laying around, glue them together, drill the holes to match where your holes are at, and it just goes right on in here like so. You can drill and do stuff on top of here, rough this piece up, pitch it, make another one, save your workbench a little bit of wear and tear. And there's a plethora of things that you can get for the bench dog system. Like they have them that push in different directions and clamp straight down and jigs, and it's endless. I just bought a couple cheapy ones so I could show you guys while I lock down the perfect set. Have these guys in the description. I think it's like 20 bucks. Pretty fun to play around with. My last upgrade is a bigger bench vise. I have a tiny one on the other workbench, and this one is much larger. Essentially, I'm just going to take this board here. It's a piece of 2x12 scrap. I'm going to screw it up underneath. If you guys wanted to use two glued together pieces of 2x4, you could get it done. It's quite small for the holes. And this just mounts up underneath. Gives you a nice large working vise. Drill a few holes into a board that line up with your vise's arms. Then screw it back into place and anchor that board onto the front of the vise. I see you're admiring this large handle. She has a secret. Actually didn't have a dowel rod that was this size, so I just took a smaller piece and made a big one. And no one will ever know, as long as they don't watch this. Paint, stain, or seal your creation to your liking. I did a two-tone with a darker honey stain on the legs, lighter Minwax stain on the top. I'm going to give it a few days to dry. I'm going to hit it with that 50-50 mix boiled linseed oil and mineral spirits just to give it a little protection without giving it a lot of sheen or shine. I don't think my camera's like that. I did a bar top 2-part epoxy on my previous workbenches. It is holding up fabulously. You can see where I've had heavy use on the rolling cart. It's starting to crack on the corners, and with all of these extra holes, when you pour it on, it's self-leveling. You kind of rake it, so you might have some issues because of the holes. But once it gets kind of old and you start banging stuff around on there, it starts to crack out at the edges, and I fear it's going to do it really bad on the holes. So I'm not going to deal with that. Also, the shininess, I don't want to do that. It's a great option. You can buy them pretty cheap. Look for bar top epoxy kits, countertop epoxy kits maybe, so that way you can get your top looking nice. You can also throw a beeswax, just a quick rub on top. Makes things slide around nice and easy. It's quick to reapply. That would look good as well. If you guys are shying away from the bench dog system, you're like, that ain't for me, man. That's cool. They do also make a router bit that looks like a piece of T-track. So instead of buying all that expensive T-track, you just buy this router bit. You can router it out, buy the T-bolts, or even use hexagon bolt heads and slide it in there. integrate into a T-track system for your workbench top instead of the holes. I feel like these are easier for cleanup. If I blow it off, I don't have to blow out all the tracks. So that's why I went with the holes. Also, I think it looks kind of cool. So I did that. Tons of options you could buy for T-track or for the bench dog. I've seen where they also integrate them into the vertical parts and the horizontal pieces. All super cool things. You don't have to add on the vise if you want to. You want to get a bigger vise. It's an option. I think I'm going to love this little guy to drill holes onto. Big thing I saw on Pinterest, so built one of those as well. And then this very bottom, if you wish to put a full sheet of plywood, you can do so very easily. It's a perfect square with how these are mounted. You don't have to try to cut out around the legs. You're welcome. So there it is. Perfect workbench. $63. You start adding a few things on. Under $100 to add the caster wheels and the bench dog. It's just, this guy I think was like 48 bucks. So that's where it got me. Okay. I still need to drill a big gigantic mess of holes so I can mount my rig system to this, because it's going to become the new workbench. So in those videos that you're going to go watch next about people building workbenches, see if they're still using the workbench, because I guarantee they're not. But we are. 18 2x4s, people. All right. See you later. Bye. That's it. See ya. Yep. I'll serenade you as I sand. Why are you looking for other videos when mine are the best, and there's just those? And there might be others who hold out their hands, but I'll never make you pay for plans. I'll never make you pay for plans.